I bought my boyfriend a trip to Tokyo for cherry blossom season, his dream vacation. At his sister's birthday, he screamed, "This pathetic loser thinks I'm some desperate weeaboo who'd wet himself over anime land." Waving the itinerary, he mocked, "Capsule hotel? What am I, a broke backpacker?" His dad snorted, "Even his high school girlfriend had more class." Then he grabbed the tickets, fed them to the fire, and smirked at his ex, "Real romances in Italy." Everyone laughed. I just smiled and said quietly, "Enjoy the fire." Then I left. This morning, my phone lit up with 198 missed calls and 103 messages. The last one simply read, "Please. I'll do anything. Look, I need to tell someone about this, and you're going to think I'm either crazy or brilliant. Maybe both. But 3 months ago, if you'd told me I'd be sitting here watching my phone buzz with desperate pleas from the man who humiliated me in front of his entire family, I would have laughed until I cried. Actually, I did cry. A lot. But not anymore. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start with revenge, it starts with love. The stupid, blind, pathetic kind that makes you do things like spend your entire savings on a dream vacation for someone who sees you as a convenience. His name is Marcus, and for 2 years, I thought he was my person. You know that feeling when someone just fits into your life like they were always supposed to be there? When their laugh becomes your favorite sound and their sleepy morning voice makes your chest warm. Yeah. I had it bad. Marcus worked at a tech startup downtown, one of those places with ping-pong tables and kombucha on tap that makes 20-somethings think they're changing the world. He was brilliant with code, could debug anything, and had this way of explaining complex problems that made you feel like you understood life a little better. When he talked about his work, his whole face lit up, and I loved being the person he came home to, the one who listened to his victories and frustrations over takeout containers on my couch. But there was something else Marcus loved even more than coding, something he'd only share with me during our most intimate conversations. Japan. Not just visiting Japan, obsessing over it. He taught himself Japanese using apps, watched obscure anime series I'd never heard of, could explain the difference between regional ramen styles like a food critic. His eyes would go soft and distant when he described walking through Tokyo during cherry blossom season, the pink petals falling like snow, the way the light filtered through the branches in Ueno Park. "It's like stepping into a dream," he told me one night, his head on my shoulder as we watched a Studio Ghibli film. Everything there just makes sense in a way that nowhere else does. The attention to detail, the respect for tradition mixed with innovation. I've wanted to go since I was 15, but... He'd trail off, embarrassed by the depth of his longing. That's when I knew what I had to do. I started planning in January. Marcus's birthday was in March, right at the beginning of cherry blossom season. Perfect timing. I researched everything, the best neighborhoods for hanami viewing, traditional ryokans that wouldn't break my bank account, the exact dates when the sakura would be in full bloom. I watched YouTube videos about etiquette, read forums about hidden gems tourists miss, even started learning basic Japanese phrases so I could help him navigate. The capsule hotel was my compromise. Marcus had always been fascinated by them, these tiny, efficient pods that seemed like something from the future. "It's so uniquely Japanese," he'd said once, showing me photos. "Minimalist but perfectly designed. I'd love to experience that." A traditional hotel would have cost 3 times as much, and honestly, I thought he'd find it charming. Adventurous. Authentically Japanese. I worked overtime for 2 months to afford it. Skipped lunches, canceled my Netflix subscription, sold jewelry I'd inherited from my grandmother. When the confirmation emails arrived, flights, accommodations, even tickets to a traditional tea ceremony, I printed everything on expensive paper and put it in a leather portfolio. My hands shook as I wrapped it. This wasn't just a gift. This was me saying, "I see you. I understand what makes you happy. I love you enough to make your dreams real." The plan was to give it to him at his sister's birthday party. Jenna was turning 30, and the whole Morrison family would be there, parents, aunts, uncles, family friends. I figured Marcus would be so excited he'd want to share the news with everyone, and I'd get to see his face light up surrounded by all the people who mattered to him. I should have seen the warning signs before that night. The way Marcus had started making comments about immature interests and growing up. How he'd gotten weird about watching anime when his work friends came over. The subtle but increasing emphasis on how much money his co-workers made, what cars they drove, where they vacationed. But I was so focused on the surprise, so confident in my gift, that I missed the shift happening right in front of me. The Morrison house always intimidated me a little. It's one of those colonial-style homes in the suburbs with a circular driveway and perfect landscaping that screams we have money and we want you to know it. Marcus's dad, Richard, worked in finance and never let anyone forget it. His mom, Patricia, was the kind of woman who smiled with her mouth but not her eyes, especially when she looked at me. "Emma, sweetheart," she cooed when I arrived, her voice dripping with the fake warmth she reserved for people she considered beneath her family's social status. "How lovely that you could make it." I wasn't sure if. She paused, letting the implication hang. She wasn't sure if I could afford the right kind of gift, if I'd fit in, if I belonged. The living room was full of Morrisons and their friends, all holding wine glasses and laughing at conversations I couldn't quite join. Marcus was by the fireplace with his college buddies, guys who worked at bigger companies and drove BMWs. They were talking loudly about their latest vacations, ski trips to Aspen, beach houses in the Hamptons, wine tours through Tuscany. I found Jenna in the kitchen, and we chatted while she arranged appetizers on expensive-looking platters. She was the only Morrison I genuinely liked, down-to-earth, funny, without the pretentious edge that seemed to run in the family. When it came time for gifts, I watched her open elaborate presents from everyone else. Jewelry from her parents, a designer handbag from her boyfriend, a weekend spa package from her boss. Then Marcus stood up. "Actually," he said, his voice carrying over the conversation, "before we finish up, Emma has something she wants to give me. An early birthday present." He was smiling, but there was something in his tone I couldn't place. Something that made my stomach tighten. All eyes turned to me. 20+ people, wine-flushed and expectant, watching as I pulled out the leather portfolio with shaking hands. "It's not much," I started, but Marcus interrupted. "Oh, don't be modest, babe. Tell everyone what you got me." There was a challenge in his voice now. A sharpness that made me hesitate. But I was committed, the portfolio already in his hands. It's a trip to Japan. For cherry blossom season. I know how much you've always wanted to." The room went dead silent. Marcus opened the portfolio, and I watched his expression change from fake enthusiasm to something cold and ugly. He pulled out the flight confirmations, the hotel bookings, the carefully planned itinerary. His face was turning red, but not from excitement. From embarrassment. "Are you serious?" His voice was loud enough that everyone could hear every word. "A capsule hotel?" He held up the booking confirmation like it was evidence in a trial. "What am I, a broke college kid on a backpacking trip?" The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. My face burned as I tried to understand what was happening. "Marcus, I thought you'd love..." "Love what?" He was standing now, waving the papers. This pathetic attempt at a romantic gesture? "You think I'm some desperate weeaboo who'd wet himself over anime land?" The words hit me like physical blows. Weeaboo. The exact term he'd used when talking about other people's interests, but never about his own. Never about the passion he'd shared with me in private moments. His college friend Brad snickered. "Dude, is she serious? A capsule hotel?" "Apparently." Marcus's voice was dripping with disdain. "Emma here thinks I want to sleep in a pod like some kind of lab rat. What's next? A walking tour of Tokyo's robot cafes. Maybe we can get matching Sailor Moon outfits." The laughter that followed felt like razors in my ears. His father, Richard, leaned back in his armchair and shook his head. "Son, even your high school girlfriend had more class than this. Remember when Sarah took you to that resort in Napa? Now that was a proper vacation." Sarah. Marcus's ex, who'd dumped him 3 years ago to marry someone with a better job. The woman Patricia still asked about at family dinners, the one whose Christmas card still went up on the refrigerator. "At least Sarah understood quality," Patricia chimed in, not even bothering to look at me. "Some people just don't have the sophistication to recognize what's appropriate." I wanted to disappear. To melt into the expensive hardwood floors and never exist again. But Marcus wasn't done. "You know what real romance looks like?" He walked to the fireplace, still holding my carefully planned itinerary. "Italy. Tuscany. Wine country. Places with actual culture and class, not whatever this is supposed to be." He held the papers over the flames. "Marcus, don't," but he was already feeding them to the fire. Page by page. The flight confirmations curling and blackening. The hotel reservations disappearing in orange flashes. The tea ceremony tickets turning to ash. 2 months of overtime. My grandmother's jewelry. Every penny I'd saved. going up in smoke while his family laughed. When the last page was gone, Marcus dusted off his hands and turned to look at me with this smirk. This satisfied, cruel expression that told me everything I needed to know about who he really was underneath the person I thought I'd fallen in love with. Maybe next time you'll think about what someone actually wants instead of projecting your own weird fantasies onto them. The room erupted in laughter again. Loud, sharp sounds that felt like they were coming from very far away. And that's when something inside me just went quiet. Not angry. Not hurt. Just quiet. I looked around the room at all these people, Marcus's family, his friends, the woman who'd raised him to think treating people like this was acceptable behavior. I saw them clearly for the first time. Not as intimidating figures I needed to impress, but as small, cruel people who got their kicks from watching someone get humiliated. Marcus was still smirking, probably expecting me to cry or yell or give him the dramatic reaction that would complete his performance. Instead, I smiled. "Enjoy the fire," I said quietly. Then I picked up my purse and walked out. I didn't slam the door. Didn't throw anything or make a scene. I just left. Behind me, I could hear confused murmurs, someone asking if I was coming back, Marcus calling my name with irritation rather than concern. But I was already in my car, turning the key, driving away from that house and everything it represented. The thing about humiliation is that it burns hot and bright, but then it fades into something else. Something colder and more useful. Clarity. I drove home through empty suburban streets, my mind strangely calm. When I got to my apartment, my small, perfectly fine apartment that had never felt inadequate until I started comparing it to the Morrison house, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch. The same couch where Marcus had told me about his dreams of Japan. Where he'd shared his deepest longings and made me feel like I was the only person who truly understood him. All of it had been real. I was sure of that. The passion in his voice when he talked about cherry blossoms, the way his eyes lit up when he described walking through Tokyo's temples, the genuine excitement when he showed me photos of places he wanted to visit. That wasn't fake. What was fake was his willingness to stand by those dreams when it mattered. When his family's approval was on the line, when his image was at stake, when he had to choose between the person he really was and the person he thought he should be, he chose wrong. And he'd chosen to destroy my gift not just with fire, but with cruelty. I finished my wine and went to bed. Slept better than I had in months, actually. When you stop trying to be someone you're not, when you stop walking on eggshells around people who don't respect you, there's a strange peace in it. The next morning, my phone started buzzing. Marcus, of course. A single text, "We need to talk." I deleted it without responding. More texts throughout the day. Increasing in frequency and desperation. "Emma, come on. You're being dramatic." My family was just joking around. I was drunk, I didn't mean it. "Please call me back." I went about my Sunday like any other Sunday. Grocery shopping, laundry, meal prep for the week. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd glance at it, read whatever Marcus had sent, and delete it. By Monday, the tone had changed. Look, maybe I overreacted a little. The Japan thing just caught me off guard. We can talk about traveling somewhere else. I miss you. I went to work. I'm a graphic designer at a small marketing firm, and threw myself into projects. My boss commented on how focused I seemed, how sharp my creative instincts were. Funny how much mental energy you have when you're not constantly second-guessing yourself in a relationship. Tuesday, Emma, please. I love you. Wednesday, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Thursday, my mom said she was sorry if she hurt your feelings. Friday, I can't sleep. I can't eat. Please just talk to me. It was fascinating, watching the progression. The entitlement fading into confusion, then into panic. I'd become the one with power in the dynamic, and Marcus had no idea how to handle it. But I wasn't ignoring him out of spite. I was ignoring him because every text confirmed what I'd realized that night at his sister's party. He was sorry he'd lost me, but he wasn't sorry for how he'd treated me. He was sorry for the consequences, not the actions. Week 2 brought phone calls. Dozens of them. I let every single one go to voicemail. The voicemails started confident, "Emma, this is ridiculous. Just call me back and we'll work this out." Then frustrated, "I don't understand what you want from me." I said I was sorry. Then desperate, "Baby, please. I can't function without you. Everything feels wrong." Week 3, he started showing up places. My coffee shop on Saturday mornings. The grocery store I always went to. The gym where I took yoga classes. I'd see him across the parking lot or through a window, and he'd look diminished. Smaller somehow. His usual confidence replaced by this twitchy energy of someone who'd lost control of a situation and didn't know how to get it back. I never approached him. Never acknowledged him. Just went about my business like he wasn't there. The thing is, I wasn't playing hard to get or trying to teach him a lesson. I was genuinely moving on. For the first time in 2 years, I was making decisions based on what I wanted instead of what would make Marcus happy or what would earn his family's approval. I signed up for a Japanese language class. Started watching documentaries about Japanese culture and history, not anime, but real, substantive content about art and philosophy and traditions. I began saving money again, but this time for my own trip to Japan. Solo travel. No compromises, no one else's opinions to consider. It felt incredible. Week 4, Marcus's texts became frantic. I've been thinking about what you said about Japan. Maybe we could plan a different trip there. Something nicer. I looked at some hotels in Tokyo. Really nice ones. I was wrong about the capsule hotel thing. It actually sounds kind of cool. Too little, too late. And still missing the point entirely. The breakthrough, if you can call it that, came on a rainy Thursday evening in March. I was at home, working on a freelance design project, when someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking. Pounding. I looked through the peephole and saw Marcus, soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his head and his eyes wild. Emma. His voice was muffled but desperate. I know you're in there. Please, just let me explain. I stood there for a long moment, watching him through the small glass circle. He looked awful. Thin, like he hadn't been eating. Dark circles under his eyes. The confident, smirking man who'd burned my gift was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he was falling apart. Part of me, the part that had loved him for 2 years, wanted to open the door. To let him in, make him tea, listen to his apologies, and try to fix whatever had broken between us. But I'd spent a month learning to trust my instincts instead of my impulses, and my instincts were screaming warnings. Emma, please. His voice cracked. I can't do this anymore. I can't lose you. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Just stood there in my doorway, looking at this man who'd once been the center of my world and now felt like a stranger. What do you want, Marcus? He looked shocked that I'd actually opened the door, like he hadn't planned beyond getting my attention. He ran his hands through his wet hair. I want to fix this. I want us to go back to how we were. How we were when? When you were embarrassed of the things you loved. When you let your family mock me. When you burned 2 months of my overtime because it didn't meet your image standards. I was drunk, Emma. And my family, they have expectations, you know? They don't understand. They don't understand what? That you're a person with your own interests and dreams? That you're capable of appreciating something beautiful even if it doesn't cost a fortune? He flinched like I'd slapped him. It wasn't about the money, he said weakly. It was entirely about the money. And about what your family would think. And about maintaining some image of yourself that requires you to trash the things that actually make you happy. I could see him trying to formulate a response, some way to argue or deflect or make me the unreasonable one. But the fight had gone out of him somewhere over the past month. I miss you, he said finally, and his voice was so small I almost felt sorry for him. I miss us. I miss talking to you about everything. About Japan and coding problems and stupid movies and what we want for dinner. I miss having someone who actually listens to me. You had someone who listened to you, Marcus. You had someone who loved you enough to spend every penny she had making your dreams come true. And you threw it in a fire because you were more afraid of looking foolish in front of people who don't really know you than you were of losing the person who actually did. He started crying then. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears mixing with the rain on his face. I know, he whispered. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve another chance. But Emma, I'm falling apart without you. I can't sleep, I can't focus at work, I can't. He took a shaky breath. I've been looking at flights to Tokyo every day. Just staring at them, trying to understand what I destroyed. That got to me, I'll admit. The image of Marcus alone in his apartment, finally understanding what he'd thrown away, finally seeing the value in something after it was too late to matter. But understanding your mistakes isn't the same as learning from them. What do you want me to say, Marcus? I want you to say you'll give me another chance. I want you to say we can start over. I want. He looked at me with desperate eyes. I want you to say you still love me. I stood there in my doorway, looking at this broken version of the man I'd planned to build a life with, and felt something I hadn't expected. Not love. Not anger. Not even satisfaction. Just sadness. For both of us. I did love you, I said quietly. I loved you enough to see who you really were underneath all the performance and pretense. I loved the Marcus who got excited about Japanese architecture and stayed up all night debugging code and made me feel like the most important person in his world. Hope flickered across his face. But that Marcus, I continued, would never have humiliated someone he cared about to impress people he didn't even particularly like. That Marcus would have been excited about a thoughtful gift even if it wasn't perfect. That Marcus would have defended me, or at the very least, not participated in tearing me down. The hope died. So either you were lying to me about who you were for 2 years, or you were lying to them about who you are now. Either way, I can't trust you anymore. Emma, I'm going to Japan, Marcus. In April, for cherry blossom season. I'm going alone, and I'm going to stay in that capsule hotel, and I'm going to have the experience you were too afraid to want in public. He looked like I'd punched him in the chest. I'm going to walk through Ueno Park when the sakura are in full bloom, and I'm going to think about how beautiful it is without worrying about whether someone else thinks it's sophisticated enough. I'm going to eat street food and visit temples and maybe even go to a robot cafe if I feel like it. Please, he whispered. And I'm going to be glad I'm there alone instead of with someone who would spend the whole trip worried about what people back home might think of the photos. I stepped back into my apartment and put my hand on the door. Goodbye, Marcus. I closed the door and locked it. He stood there for another 10 minutes, occasionally knocking softly and calling my name, but I didn't respond. Eventually, I heard his footsteps walking away. That was 2 weeks ago. This morning, I woke up to 198 missed calls and 103 text messages. Marcus, of course. But not just Marcus. His mother, Emma, dear, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus is quite upset, and perhaps we should all sit down and talk this through like adults. His father, young lady, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but my son is a wreck. This tantrum of yours has gone on long enough. Jenna, Emma, I don't know what happened at my party, but Marcus is scaring me. He's not sleeping, barely eating, and he keeps talking about some trip to Japan like it's the most important thing in the world. Can you please just call him? Brad, somehow, yo, Emma, Marcus gave me your number. Dude is seriously messed up. Like, we're worried about him. Can you just talk to him? He's been crying at work. Friends I hadn't heard from in months, all with variations of the same message. Marcus contacted them. He's falling apart. Can't I just give him a chance to make things right? But it was the last message that made me actually laugh out loud. Marcus, send at 3:47 a.m., please. I'll do anything. Anything. Such a dangerous word, especially coming from someone who'd already proven he'd sacrifice his integrity for social approval. I'm not going to respond to any of them. Not because I'm cruel, but because this is what desperation looks like when someone finally realizes the magnitude of what they've lost. This is Marcus understanding, for the first time, that actions have consequences that can't be undone with apologies or charm or family pressure. He's probably been telling himself for weeks that I was just being dramatic, that I'd calm down and come back, that our love was strong enough to overcome one bad night. It's only now hitting him that some damage can't be repaired. The irony is that if he'd come to me the morning after his sister's party, if he'd shown up at my door with genuine remorse and a real understanding of how deeply he'd hurt me, we probably could have worked through it. Not easily, not without a lot of difficult conversations about respect and trust and what we actually wanted from each other, but we could have tried. Instead, he spent a month assuming I'd get over it, that my love for him was so unconditional that I'd eventually accept being treated as less than I was worth. He was wrong. My flight to Tokyo leaves in 6 days. I'm packed, I have my itinerary, a new one, planned entirely for my own interests, and I've been practicing Japanese phrases with an app. The capsule hotel I'm staying in has excellent reviews, and I'm actually excited about the experience. It feels like stepping into the future, sleeping in a pod designed for maximum efficiency and comfort. I'm going to see the cherry blossoms at their peak. I'm going to visit temples that have stood for centuries and eat at restaurants Marcus would have been too self-conscious to try. I'm going to take a million photos and post them online if I want to, without worrying about whether they look sophisticated or impressive to people whose opinions don't actually matter. And if I meet someone while I'm there, another solo traveler, maybe, or a local who wants to practice their English, I'll know they're interested in the real me. Not the version of me that tries to impress other people or makes herself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of appropriate. Marcus's phone calls haven't stopped. As I write this, my phone is buzzing with another attempt. I don't need to answer it to know what he'd say. Some combination of desperation and promises and bargaining that completely misses the point of why this relationship ended. He still thinks this is about the trip. About the money or the location or the accommodations. He doesn't understand that it was never about Japan at all. It was about choosing love over fear. Authenticity over approval. Standing by the people who stand by you. It was about integrity. And some lessons can only be learned the hard way. I hope he learns it. I hope the next woman he falls in love with gets the Marcus who's been through this experience, who's learned that the people worth having in your life are the ones who make you feel safe being exactly who you are. Who's learned that family approval means nothing if it comes at the cost of treating someone you love with cruelty. But that's not my job anymore. My job is to go to Japan and fall in love with the world and with my own independence. My job is to trust my instincts and make decisions that honor what I actually want instead of what I think I should want. My job is to be the kind of person who doesn't burn other people's dreams in the name of social acceptability. The cherry blossoms are waiting. And unlike Marcus's promises, they won't disappoint me. But apparently, Marcus wasn't done with his campaign. Day 3 of the phone bombardment, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Patricia Morrison standing on my doorstep in her perfectly pressed blazer and pearl earrings, holding what looked like an expensive gift bag. This should be interesting. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Just stood there in my pajamas and messy hair, looking at this woman who'd never spoken to me with genuine warmth in 2 years. Emma, dear. Her smile was so forced it looked painful. I hope you don't mind me stopping by so early. I brought you a little something. She held out the gift bag like a peace offering. Inside was a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my car payment and a card with flowing script that read, "For a sophisticated palate." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Mrs. Morrison, what do you want?" Her composure slipped just slightly. "Well, I think we need to have a little chat, woman to woman. Marcus is. Well, he's not himself lately. Richard and I are quite concerned." "About what, exactly?" "He's been calling in sick to work. He's lost weight. Yesterday I found him in his childhood bedroom, just staring at his computer screen with pictures of Japan pulled up. It's not healthy, Emma." I almost laughed. She was describing someone having a breakdown over losing something precious, and she was treating it like a medical condition that needed fixing. "Have you considered that maybe he's finally processing the consequences of his actions?" Patricia's lips tightened. "Now, I know you're upset about what happened at Jenna's party, but you have to understand, families tease each other. That's what we do." Marcus was just showing off a little. Men do that when they're uncomfortable. He wasn't uncomfortable, Mrs. Morrison. He was embarrassed. Of me, of the gift I gave him, of the interests he'd shared with me in private. He was so concerned about what you all would think that he threw away something that meant everything to him. "The Japan thing?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Honey, that was just a phase. Marcus is a grown man with a serious career. He doesn't need to be running around Asia like some college backpacker." There it was. The core belief that had poisoned Marcus against his own dreams. "You know what I find interesting, Mrs. Morrison? Marcus spent 2 years telling me about Japanese culture with more passion and knowledge than I've ever heard him express about anything else. He taught himself the language. He could explain the historical significance of different architectural styles. He knew more about Japanese literature than most people know about books from their own country." Patricia's expression was growing colder by the second. "But the moment you laughed at it," I continued, "he decided it was childish. Not because his feelings changed, but because your approval mattered more to him than his own happiness. We want what's best for Marcus. You want what looks best to your social circle. There's a difference." She drew herself up to her full height, which wasn't particularly impressive. "Young lady, I didn't come here to be lectured by someone who clearly doesn't understand how relationships work. Marcus needs stability, not someone who encourages his eccentricities. His eccentricities? You mean the things that make him interesting? The passions that light him up? The dreams that give his life meaning beyond just making money and impressing people at cocktail parties? I mean the childish interests that are keeping him from reaching his full potential. Finally, the truth. And what is his full potential, exactly? Making more money? Buying a bigger house? Marrying someone who looks good in your Christmas card photos? I mean settling down with someone appropriate. Someone who understands quality and class and can help him build the kind of life he deserves. Someone like Sarah? Patricia's face lit up. Well, now that you mention it, Sarah has been asking about Marcus lately. She's going through a divorce, and I think she's realized what she lost when I held up my hand. Stop. Just stop. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just about getting Marcus and me back together. This was about Patricia seeing an opportunity to orchestrate the reunion she'd been dreaming about for years. You've been talking to Sarah, haven't you? Patricia had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. We've stayed in touch over the years. She's such a lovely girl, and she's always regretted how things ended with Marcus. She's always regretted how things ended? She's the one who ended them. She left him for someone richer. She was young and confused. People make mistakes. And now that her marriage is falling apart, she's suddenly interested in Marcus again. How convenient. Patricia's mask was slipping further. Sarah understands Marcus in a way that someone from a similar background can. She appreciates the finer things in life. She would never have suggested something so unsuitable for a birthday gift. There it was. The real reason for this visit wasn't to reconcile Marcus and me. It was to clear me out of the way so Sarah could slide back into the picture. Mrs. Morrison, I need you to understand something very clearly. I stepped closer to her, and she actually took a step back. I don't want Marcus back. Not because I'm playing hard to get, not because I'm waiting for a better apology, but because I finally see him clearly. And you know what I see? She waited, her expression guarded. I see a man who's so desperate for your approval that he'll betray his own heart to get it. A man who's so afraid of disappointing you that he'll destroy something beautiful rather than risk you thinking less of him. A man who's 32 years old and still making major life decisions based on what mommy and daddy will think. Patricia's face went white, then red. And you know what the saddest part is? He's miserable. He's always been miserable trying to be the person you want him to be instead of the person he actually is. But he's so used to the misery that he thinks it's normal. He thinks happiness is supposed to be contingent on other people's opinions. How dare you? I dare because I love him enough to want him to be happy. Really happy. Not just successful or impressive or socially acceptable. Happy. You don't know anything about love. If you did, you'd fight for him instead of throwing him away over one mistake. I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. Fight for him? Mrs. Morrison, I spent 2 years fighting for him. Fighting to understand him, to support his dreams, to love him exactly as he was. I fought for him by saving every penny I had to give him something that would make him happy. And you know what he did with that love? She was quiet now, her lips pressed into a thin line. He fed it to your fireplace while you all laughed. He turned my love into a performance for your entertainment. So tell me, what exactly should I be fighting for now? Patricia straightened her shoulders, attempting to regain her composure. You should be fighting for your future. Marcus is a catch, Emma. He has a good job. He comes from a good family, he could give you a comfortable life. Do you really think you're going to find better? The condescension in her voice was breathtaking. Mrs. Morrison, I don't want to find better. I want to find different. I want to find someone who doesn't see love as a business transaction or a social climbing opportunity. I want someone who gets excited about things without worrying what other people will think. I want someone brave enough to stand up for what matters to them, even when it's uncomfortable. You want fantasy, she snapped. You want some romantic notion that doesn't exist in the real world. Maybe. But I'd rather be alone with my fantasies than settled with someone who makes me feel like I have to earn basic respect and kindness. We stood there staring at each other for a long moment. Two women with completely different ideas about what life should look like, what love should cost, what happiness was worth. You're making a mistake, she said finally. You'll regret this. Maybe. But it'll be my mistake to make and my regret to live with. That's what adults do, Mrs. Morrison. They make their own choices and accept the consequences, instead of blaming other people when things don't go according to plan. She turned to leave, then paused. Sarah would never have put him in such an awkward position. No, I agreed. Sarah would have bought him something expensive and tasteful that he didn't particularly want, and he would have thanked her politely, and they both would have felt vaguely dissatisfied without understanding why. Patricia walked away without another word, her heels clicking sharply on the concrete. I watched her climb into her luxury SUV and drive off, probably already planning her next move in the campaign to reunite Marcus with his appropriate ex-girlfriend. The gift bag was still sitting on my doorstep. I picked it up and looked at the wine bottle, some French vintage I'd never heard of, probably chosen more for the price tag than the taste. The card felt heavy in my hands, expensive paper with that message about sophisticated palates. I went inside and poured the wine down the drain. Not out of spite, but because I knew it wasn't really a gift. It was a prop in Patricia's performance of reconciliation, a way to make me feel bought and grateful and willing to fall back into line. The waste bothered me for about 30 seconds. Then I remembered that Marcus had wasted something worth infinitely more than expensive wine, and my guilt evaporated. My phone buzzed with another text from him. My mom said she came to see you. Please don't let her ruin this. We can work things out without them. Too little, too late. Again. The pattern was becoming clear. Marcus would panic, send desperate messages, enlist family and friends to intervene on his behalf, promise to change or do better or be different. But at no point had he demonstrated actual understanding of what he'd done wrong or taken responsibility without immediately trying to minimize it or shift blame. Even now, his text was trying to position his mother as the problem, as if she'd acted independently rather than with his full knowledge and probably at his request. I deleted the message and went back to my Tokyo preparations. 2 days later, Jenna called. Not texted, called. At 11 p.m., which was unusual for her. Emma? Thank heavens you picked up. I didn't know if you were still talking to any of us. Hey, Jenna. What's up? It's Marcus. Her voice was tight with worry. Emma, I'm scared. He's not okay. Like, really not okay. I felt a flicker of genuine concern. Despite everything, I didn't want Marcus to actually hurt himself. What's going on? He's been staying at Mom and Dad's house since last week. Won't go to his apartment, won't go to work, barely eats. He just sits in his old room looking at his computer. And Emma. She paused. He's been learning Japanese. Like, obsessively. He's got books and apps and he's been writing things down in a notebook. In Japanese characters. My chest tightened. What kind of things? I don't know. I can't read it. But he keeps talking about cherry blossoms and apologizing. Not to us, to himself, I think. Or maybe to you. He keeps saying he's sorry over and over in Japanese. The image that painted was almost unbearable. Marcus alone in his childhood bedroom, finally embracing the passion he'd been too ashamed to defend, but only after it was too late to matter. Jenna, I'm sorry he's struggling, but, I know you don't owe him anything. I was at the party, Emma. I saw what happened. What he did was cruel and stupid and he deserves to lose you. That surprised me. Jenna had never criticized her family's behavior before. But Emma, I'm worried he's going to hurt himself. Not on purpose, but he's not taking care of himself. He's not sleeping, barely drinking water. Mom keeps trying to get Sarah to come over and cheer him up, but he won't even look at her. He just keeps asking if anyone has heard from you. What do you want me to do, Jenna? I don't know. Maybe. Could you just call him? Just once? Not to get back together, but to let him know you're not completely cutting him out of existence? I closed my eyes. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of, being pulled back into Marcus's drama by well-meaning people who cared about him. Jenna, if I call him, he's going to take it as a sign that we can reconcile. He's going to think that if he just suffers enough, demonstrates enough remorse, I'll come back. Would that be so terrible? The question hung between us. Would it be so terrible to forgive Marcus, to give him another chance, to try to rebuild what we'd had? Yes, I said finally. It would be terrible. Not because I don't love him, but because I do. Because he needs to learn how to live with the consequences of his choices. Because every time someone swoops in to save him from his own actions, he learns that he doesn't really have to change. But what if he really has changed? What if this experience has taught him something? Then he'll prove it with his actions over time, with the next person he gets involved with. He'll prove it by standing up to your parents, by choosing his own happiness over their approval, by treating someone he loves with the respect they deserve even when it's inconvenient. Jenna was quiet for a long moment. But not with you. Not with me. I can't be the testing ground for whether he's learned his lesson. I can't be the person who gives him chance after chance to get it right while he figures himself out. That's not love, Jenna. That's enabling. He really loves you, Emma. I know he does. But love isn't enough if it doesn't come with respect and courage and the willingness to prioritize your partner's well-being over other people's opinions. Another long pause. Are you really going to Japan? In 3 days. By yourself? By myself. She laughed softly. That's actually really cool. I've never traveled anywhere alone. You should try it sometime. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. Will you? Will you send me pictures? Of the cherry blossoms? Of course. And Emma? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It's hard, but it's right. Marcus needs to grow up, and he's never going to do that if people keep protecting him from the consequences of his choices. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and felt the weight of what I was doing. Not just leaving Marcus, but leaving the entire ecosystem that had formed around protecting him from himself. His family, his friends, even Jenna to some extent, they all enabled his weakness because it was easier than demanding he be better. By refusing to participate in that system, I was forcing all of them to confront it. Maybe Marcus would learn from this experience. Maybe he'd emerge from his breakdown stronger, more authentic, more willing to live according to his own values instead of other people's expectations. Or maybe he'd just find someone else willing to accept less than they deserved, and the cycle would continue. Either way, it wouldn't be my problem anymore. Tokyo, here I come.